It's time for the Hockey Writers Grindline, a weekly show covering everything Detroit Red Wings. Brought to you by our own iconic top line of Wings writers. Sit back and enjoy the grind.
Welcome to the Hockey Writers Grindline. I am your host for today's show, Devin Little. Joining me on the show once again is Delaney Reimer. Delaney, how's it going? Good to see you again.
It's going pretty good.
That's what I like to hear. We are also excited to be joined today by our editor, our producer, Eborg extraordinaire, and much, much more. The titles just keep growing, it seems like. Matthew Zator, how's it going, Matt? Good to have you back on the show.
Happy to be back. It's been some crazy couple days in the NHL, but it's been doing good.
That's what I like to hear as well. And then finally, as you've noticed by now, joining us again, we're happy to have him back, is Detroit Hockey Now reporter and friend of the show, Nate Brown. Nate, it's good to have you back. How have you been?
Good. Really appreciate you guys having me back on.
Had to get one of the Brown brothers back, right?
Better than two.
Exactly. Before we begin, our show today is sponsored by The Morning Skate, the Hockey Writers Daily newsletter filled with anything and everything hockey. If you love this sport as much as we do, be sure to sign up for The Morning Skate over at morningskate.io for free delivery to your inbox Monday to Friday. Also, drop a like and subscribe to stay on top of all the best THW content. All right. Boys, girls, you know how we start the show. It's time for one good, one bad. And as the host, I will get us started. My good is going to be Nashville is hosting the NHL Awards in 2023 and the NHL Draft. And to that news, I say RIP to any of the reporters who are attending that draft, because I'm sure you're going to have a hell of a time in Nashville. My bad is trying to understand all the conditions on that pick that was included in the Sean Monahan trade. I'm still trying to figure out what pick Montreal's getting. And I'm sure actually we won't really know until 2024 to begin with. So looking forward to remembering that trade happened 2 years from now. So shout out to Montreal and Calgary. Nate, we're going to start with you. Welcome back to the show. What is your one good and one bad from the week?
My one good is we're just about a month away from hockey starting. So
Woo!
That's real hockey starting. So that's kind of nice when you look at the calendar. The one bad, I would say, hopefully this doesn't steal it from somebody, the Simon Edmondson upper body mystery of injury and food poisoning / whatever it was. You wanted to see him play the whole thing, I think. Hopefully it's nothing too serious and it's just precautionary, as they're saying. So that would be my bad, is the mystery surrounding it, maybe.
Upper body mystery. We gotta add that to the NHL lexicon. I love it. Delaney, over to you now. What are your one good and one bad from the week?
One good, kind of the same as Nate's, 1 week closer to Red Wings hockey being back. And then bad would have to be the United States losing.
Yep.
In a semi-shocking manner. I'm not sure how many people actually saw that coming, but I will give myself a tiny pat on the back for saying that Czechia is holding their own pretty well in the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was right on that. Apparently, jinxed it, but
a well-deserved pat in the back, if I say so myself. Matt, let's close it off. What is your one good and one bad from the week?
Well, my good is Canada's off to the gold medal game and beat Czechia but it was in doubt for a bit. So Czechia is a pretty tough team.
Yeah,
I think they're probably going to end up winning the bronze in the end, maybe, depending on who they play, I guess. So that's my good and then my bad is Nazem Kadri signing in Calgary and making Calgary back to being good again after losing Goudreau and Tkachuk. So and that's partly good too, that Kadri's finally signed with someone and we can stop talking about him. So we will still talk about him.
On that note, I'm going to add one bad, and I'm just going to say the New York Islanders off season because they've done nothing. So yeah, shout out to any Islanders fans that are watching this show. Hope you guys do something. All right, now let's jump right in and begin the show in earnest, and let's talk about those World Juniors that have already been alluded to. And like I said, they're already almost done, believe it or not. Canada's in the gold medal game. We're going to find out who joins them between Sweden and Finland. But let's talk about some Red Wings prospects that are attending or did attend the tourney. And Matt, I want to start with you this time. We talked about the World Juniors last week, but have there been any additional developments or players that you would like to talk about?
Not really. I mean, a lot of the people that you guys talked about in the last show, I really am impressed by. Like Carter Major really impressed me for Team USA, even though they did lose. And he had a few chances in that game as well. So he was still prominent, even though US ended up losing that game. I've been really impressed by Emil Viro as well for Team Finland. Very quietly having a pretty good tournament on the back end there. So those two for sure. Simon Edvinsson, like Nate said, it's kind of disappointing that he had to be out for that game and but he did look good before that. So it's not like he hasn't been. And from what I watched in the first period of the Sweden-Finland game, he looked pretty good for that first period too. So I don't know. I just how many guys that are in this tournament from Detroit, 9 prospects. So throughout the whole World Juniors, and it's pretty impressive to have that many prospects in the tournament, and how many different guys that are standing out as well. I don't think there's one that I could say that's been bad. I mean, Niederbach's had a couple bad penalties, but he still looked good apart from that. So overall, I'm really happy with how the Red Wings prospects have performed in this tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. Hoping that that mystery element that Nate alluded to is pretty much gone and past now, because like you said, Matt, he did look really, really good before that happened. So yeah, couldn't agree more. Delaney, over to you now. Are there any Red Wings prospects that you want to talk about over their play at in the tournament?
Well, I was just checking to see what the score of the Sweden-Finland game was right now. Finland is up 1-0 in the second. But my general observation just from Sweden as a whole, not necessarily the Red Wings prospects on it, they've looked really sleepy for most of this tournament. I was expecting a lot more of them. Yeah. Edvinsson's been great. Niederbach has had messy penalties that it's not super fun to see that. And then Wallander's doing his thing. I haven't really noticed anything extremely good, extremely bad from him. But Mazur was he stood out the most to me throughout everything so far. And then Emil Viro, he was not really on my radar until yesterday, I'll be completely honest. I saw people talking about him on the timeline, so I started looking. I'm impressed.
He's pretty good. I have to agree, though. I've been pretty, I guess, disappointed in Sweden. There's enough talent on that team to be the gold medal team, but they have kind of looked a little bit lackluster. So hopefully they get their stuff together, because, like you say, they're playing against Finland right now, and a berth in the gold medal game is on the line. So
oh yeah, they're getting outshot pretty bad, 21-11.
They are not getting their stuff together. Nate, you get the final word on this topic. What would you like to say about the Red Wings prospects play in the World Juniors?
I'll go a little bit of a different route. What Matthew was saying about just the depth of prospects is such a positive thing when you go back even 3 years ago and you look at that gradual build that they've had. And you didn't have any real superstars, obviously, but Edvinsson, I think, showed he's going to be knocking on the door, if not on that roster on opening night, if everything is okay. In fact, to Delaney's point, so Viro is that sneaky defensive prospect, kind of like a Divan Sabrango. He's a little bit older, but he reminds me a lot of Nick Jensen in terms of he kind of just came out of nowhere, and he's going to be a good, steady defenseman. Really quickly, there was an article the Red Wings released like a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, about him, about the confidence that he's playing with. And when he was initially drafted, he played in the quote unquote men's league. So he could be another surprise, maybe not as soon as we think, but keep an eye on him because he was just steady just throughout the whole tournament, really.
I couldn't agree more. I remember even going back to that 2020 draft when they got him in the third round. I personally thought it was a little bit of a steal, not a huge one, but I definitely would have been behind him going in the second round. And like you say, he's just one of those sneaky good, kind of under the radar defensemen that just does his job and isn't super flashy or anything, but just does the job and does it well. And he's among the many defensive prospects that this team has in their pool. He's another one that really has a shot to make a difference here in the future, whether it's in a year, 2 years, or 3 years. So yeah, like you say, I completely agree. Keep an eye on Emil Viro because he's one of many that will be knocking on that door sooner or later. All right, great thoughts, everybody. Now let's turn our attention to something else that stirred up quite a bit of conversation online over the last couple of days. The Athletic recently released its annual fan survey that determines confidence in each team's front office. Despite the Red Wings finishing in the bottom third of the league once again last season, they placed fourth in the survey, giving Steve Yzerman and company a glowing endorsement despite the team's current standing. Naturally, there were some people out there that were starting to wonder if fans across the NHL are giving Yzerman too much credit too soon. So that's exactly what I'm wondering today. Delaney, we're going to start with you on this one. What do you think? Are people giving the Red Wings front office too much credit too soon?
I truly do not think that it is too soon to give the amount of credit that is being given. Some of the credit is kind of an overflow from him coming from Tampa almost, because everyone knows what he did there for that team, 2 consecutive cups from the team that he built. And then bringing that ethic and that mindset into Detroit and immediately kicking things off with the rebuild. It wasn't an easy spot to pick up. The kind of cleaning up the aftermath of Ken Holland, that's going to take a minute, but he's done it in stride so far. And I don't think you need to be a Red Wings fan to realize how well of a job he's done with that necessarily. The picks, signings, it's all good. Progress, at least. So.
Yeah, I think it's evident progress, but I'll hold off for a minute here. Nate, over to you now. What do you think? Are fans giving Yzerman and company too much credit too soon?
Somewhere Steve Yzerman saw that come out and he's seen the tweets because he reads them. He just he's sitting at LCA in his office, or he's sitting in his nice back porch or whatever room he was in during the pandemic doing interviews and just kind of chuckling to himself. Kind of the same approach as whenever he's at the draft. I remember with Seider, everybody, thanks everyone. Hey, thanks so much for your hospitality. Congratulations. So he just goes to the mic, goes, yeah, with the 6th pick, this is who we're taking. He doesn't care. It's all noise. And for Red Wing fans that are, I've been seeing some of the back and forth. Who cares? You should be happy now that people are coming after the Red Wings again. It means there's fear.
Yeah.
Because that relevancy is coming. And so I really think the big thing is Yzerman should get the credit for the Lightning. Brisebois deserves the credit too for finding those pieces after 2019. They nearly blew it up after getting swept by Columbus. Mm-hmm. But no, there's not an overcorrection here of credit to Yzerman. If anything, the bar was so low when he got here. He just let everything bottom out instead of putting Band-Aids in to the roster. He let everything bottom out. He did what he said he would do, which was assess, draft, develop, hoard picks. And now this was the first free agency period where he really kind of pushed things forward. Okay, well, if a year from now they're bottom 3, then yeah, he probably deserves a B- or a C+ for roster construction. But at this point, everything is where it should be, in my opinion, anyway.
I completely agree. Matt, over to you now. And I'm particularly interested in what you have to say on this as an outsider looking in. What do you think? Are people giving Yzerman and his front office too much credit too soon?
I don't think so. I think he's like Nate said, he's doing it the right way. And this is drafting development. And this is like you say, the first time that they're actually going into free agency and doing a lot of stuff. And I've said this, I'm pretty sure I said this on one of the episodes, that it's not like he went crazy and signed huge contracts. I mean, none of these deals are ridiculously long. They're not big money. They're not going to tie up a guy for like 5 to 7 years, like Calgary has done with 2 of their players. It's doing it the right way. And I think he's just seen that this is the time. I mean, the young guys are at a point where we can maybe do this and maybe take a step forward. So I think I don't think they're giving them too much credit too soon. I mean, yeah, a lot of the prospects haven't made it yet, but you have enough of them that look good. And like, you're looking at Seider, you've got a good start on defense. You can build around him. You've got Lucas Raymond, who you're building around at forward. You got a great group of a core young group of players. And now you bring in some veterans. Maybe you're going to push forward, maybe not a playoffs, maybe not Stanley Cup yet, but you're moving in the right direction. And I think Yzerman's just done a masterful job. I mean, I'd love if he was, here in Vancouver doing the same thing. So it's yeah, I don't know. I think he's just doing it the right way.
Yeah, I completely agree. And for my 2 cents here, I think at least in the Detroit fan perspective, we got to kind of take stock about who we're talking about here. We're talking about Steve Yzerman. To quote Kevin Allen when he was on the show, a year and a half ago, there's plenty of fans around here that believe that he can walk on water, like he can do no wrong. And maybe that's not a good thing. It's probably really not a good thing because it harms your critical thinking. But that's something to be said for this dude coming in, and he talked rebuild right away, right? He's a franchise icon and he built up Tampa Bay, did what he did there. So he's not just, he's not coming in on the laurels of being a franchise icon. He's coming in as, the guy who built the Tampa Bay Lightning. And he says, this is going to take time. This is, we're going to require some patience. And I think people listened when he said that. We're 3 years in now, and the team has steadily gotten better every single year. It bottomed out in that first year, but I would go as far to say as it was always going to bottom out, whether Ken Holland was in charge or Yzerman was in charge. And then since that bottom out year, they've gotten steadily better. They've added more and more better players. Last year, they added Seider and Raymond. This year, they added Kopp, they added Perron, who all they signed. And they're probably going to add Edmondson, and they might even add a couple other prospects. So like you said, Delaney, I do think there's some overflow from his time in Tampa, but that is earned. It's not like he is getting credit for something he doesn't deserve credit for. And then also, like you said there, Matt, he's just doing it the right way, and people can see it. It'd be one thing if only the fans in Detroit were gaga about what this guy was doing, but it's fans from across the NHL. Like you said, Matt, you would love it if he was doing in Vancouver. There's dozens of other teams that would say the exact same thing. So, maybe people are a little bit excited, maybe getting a little bit ahead of themselves because a lot of it is based on prospects that haven't panned out yet, like you said, Nate. But there's faith that they are going to, because Yzerman's proven that he has an eye for talent and he knows what to do. He knows how to construct a roster with the pieces he has that are working. So at the end of the day, I don't think anyone's overly hyped or giving them credit they don't deserve. Like you said, Nate, if a year from now they're exactly where they are right now, then yeah, I think it's time to reassess and maybe start to think a bit more critically. But I think he's earned his good graces, and as long as things keep moving in the right direction, he's going to keep getting his good graces. All right, now there's a turnover, and we are now off the rush. You know how this works. We've got 2 questions. We need to answer these with 2 sentences or less. And the first question, Delaney, I'm coming to you first, so be ready. Which Red Wings prospect has raised their profile the most at the World Juniors?
Gonna have to say Carter Mazer because we knew what Edvinson was going into it, but he's been a pleasant surprise. So he takes the cake for me.
Matt, over to you.
Going with Carter Mazer as well. I don't see, they're not, everyone else was kind of expected to be good. And then Emil Vero would be my other one.
Good stuff. Nate?
Exactly what both Matt and Delaney said. That's my two.
Yes. I think Mazer's the obvious one. I will give a shout out to Donovan Sabrango, though. I think he's put himself on the map for people outside of Detroit, because people in Detroit definitely knew he was a name to watch. Next question. How would you grade Yzerman's tenure as GM so far? Nate, starting with you this time.
Oh, I'm going to say an A-, not an A, because I think the bottom fell out a little bit too much last season to get the solid A.
I can dig it. Matt, over to you.
I've A- is going to be my one as well.
Delaney?
Yep. A-.
Yeah, let's make it a clean sweep. A-. Yeah, he has not been perfect in his tenure, but he's been damn near every move he's made. You can see a justification for it. So A-. All right, good stuff. Now let's take a quick timeout, and you know what we got to do. We got to pay some bills. This is a reminder that today's show is brought to you by the Morning Skates, of course, a daily newsletter sent straight to your inbox that is filled with all sorts of hockey-related goodies. There is a link down in that description for you to go sign up. And while you're down there, be sure to give us a like, subscribe if you're new around here, hello if you are, and be sure to leave a comment down there and let us know how you would grade Yzerman 3 years into his tenure as general manager of the Red Wings. All right, now for the second half of this show, we're going to start up a little weekly segment we're planning on doing between now and basically the start of training camp, start of the season. We're going to do a little weekly preview and look at some key players for the Red Wings and kind of establish our expectations for them ahead of the 2022-23 season. And of course, there's no better place to start than the kid who got all the chatter last year, your 2022 Calder Trophy winner, Moritz Seider. Matt, we're going to start with you this time. What are your expectations for Moritz Seider entering his second year, and what does he have to do to avoid the dreaded sophomore slump?
Well, I mean, the easy answer is just do the same thing, but that's really easy. Everyone knows what Seider is now, and that's what the sophomore slump always comes from, because teams, they go over tape, they know what guys are, and then it's their job to kind of push through that. And Seider's just got to do that. He's going to be relied upon in every situation, like he was all last season. He's going to be on the power play, he's going to be on the penalty kill, he's going to play 20 plus minutes a night. He's going to lead defensemen in ice time most of the time. With a stronger defense behind him, he may have an easier time, maybe be able to kind of split that off, but I don't see that happening. I think there's a new coaching staff in place as well, so there may be some differences in there. It's kind of hard to judge of how he's going to have to impress them as well. But I have no doubt he's going to have a similar season as last season. And I don't think he's going to have a sophomore slump. He's just too good. He's just so well-rounded as a defenseman. He's already shown it at such a young age. I think he's just going to keep getting better. So I really have expectations are just to kind of be the same and better. I mean, even if he's just a little bit worse, I don't think you shouldn't freak out. So I'm very interested to see how he does in his next season, but I don't anticipate a sophomore slump at all.
Very, very good. That's promising to hear. Nate, over to you now. What are you looking for out of Seider in year 2?
Very similar, but I think to that well-rounded piece, he has the EQ too, along with the IQ. You go to the Mojo show, you ask 2 rookies, essentially Veleno as well, to go on this show and goof around and still walk a line, and it was like people just went gaga over it.
Mhm.
And I think it's cool because it kind of pulls the curtain back a little bit as to the personality of him, because you think of this big rough and tumble 6'4" defenseman, and here he is. He's a goofball. I mean, it's you need that. And that goes back again to Yzerman to kind of tie it all together. He's not picking based on skill. He's not picking on the passing fantasy. He's picking on the whole picture. He knows what it takes in that locker room of what you need, because he went through bitter disappointment for 14 seasons before he finally won. Seider's that guy. Raymond's that guy. Edvinson's that guy. I mean, that's pretty impressive. But for Seider, now they're going to look at him and Raymond to lead a little bit. And I wouldn't be shocked at all if there's an A sewn on that sweater when training camp, when opening rosters are announced. I mean, maybe that's a little with the cart before the horse. But, you know, the other thing about Seider too is I wouldn't be shocked if his offensive production goes up again. And nobody expected offensive production from him when he was even drafted or through development. It's 50 points last season. I'll take the over.
Good stuff. All right, Delaney, you get the last word on this one. Are you concerned about a Seider sophomore slump? And what are your expectations for the 21-year-old in year two?
Not at all concerned about a sophomore slump. That might come off as a little too confident per se, but I genuinely do not think it's going to happen, because in my mind, the only way that he would really have a sophomore slump is if he took winning the Calder the wrong way and said, okay, I've done enough. I've been good enough. I don't need to change anything. But even in the time leading up to the voting and the nominations and everything, he was saying, oh, I want to focus on winning. I don't really care that I'm nominated for it. So he has the mindset to just keep going, keep getting better, keep working. And if he keeps doing all of that, which he seems to be doing in the off season from what we've been able to see, then I don't see a sophomore slump happening. But in terms of what I expect for next season, I'm expecting him to be essentially the leader of the Red Wings blue line, even though he'll have players older than him coming in and people who have played more. He's going to be that clear leader. And he was even the clear leader last year when he was a rookie. So like Nate said, I wouldn't be shocked to see an A on him. We do need them. We don't have them anymore. So we do need new A's on sweaters. So I'm also expecting the offensive side of his game to go up. I'm at least rooting for a few more goals, just for fun. It's always fun to have a big defenseman that can score and also hit the nastiest reverse checks you have ever seen in your life. But yeah, his mindset is going to get him places, and it already has. So he's potentially one of the most sound hockey players I have seen, especially rookies. Just solid.
The thing about sophomore slumps in my mind is that usually, like you said, Matt, they usually come from basically the opposition growing wiser and realizing that you're a threat and you have to account for you. But I also think that it comes from elevated roles. Like I think about Larkin in his sophomore year, because he had a sophomore slump, but that was also the first year he played center. He was a winger in his first year and then he moved over to the center. And I think that move, as well as the fact that, teams were keyed in on him now, that kind of contributed to him slumping in his second year. Seider he's not going to get an elevated role. He was already their top defenseman. You can't be more than a top defenseman. If anything, he's just going to play a bit more. The only thing that, like you said, Matt, the only thing that he's going to face is just people knowing, look out for that Seider kid. We got to figure out what we're going to do with that Seider kid. But even then, I think that about a quarter of the way through last season, people realized, what are we going to do about that Seider kid? We got to do something about that Seider kid. So I agree with everybody. I'm not really concerned about Seider slumping. If he takes a step back, it's going to be a step, not anything to be concerned about at all. And I don't even think he's going to take a step back. So hopefully we're not jinxing you, Moritz, but he's to Nate's point. He's he's got a good mindset. And I think that'll play a big role in making sure he doesn't suffer that sophomore slump. All right. Now, of course, for our second player that we're going to highlight in this little preview series, we got to talk about the other rookie sensation from this past season. Of course, I'm talking about Lucas Raymond. Choo choo. Just like Seider, Raymond is entering his second season after a very impressive season. Finished fourth in Calder voting, and he was first in my hearts and many others. But now the focus shifts to year two. Delaney, you went last for Seider, so you're going to go first for Raymond. What are you hoping to see out of Lucas Raymond this season? And are you worried about a sophomore slump for him?
He had a phenomenal rookie season, broke and matched a lot of rookie records within the franchise, and just did remarkable things. But I'd like to see a little bit more consistent success out of him. I feel like he kind of not necessarily fell off, but flatlined a little bit towards the end of the season. You can tell that he played 82 games as a rookie. Mm-hmm. That's a lot. That's a lot to ask of a rookie, because sometimes a rookie season will mean 20, 30, 50 games, but he was there pretty much the entire time, except for when he was out from COVID, if I remember correctly. So, in not having the strongest team in the world behind you defensively and stuff, you're going to get tired. So, I'd like to see him have a bit more success and be able to get a bit more confident in his game at the NHL level, given a bit more of padding behind him, more support, and having Bertuzzi more consistently now, hopefully will be good if he's on that top line with him and Larkin. So having more consistency in the lines will also help. Mm-hmm. And I'm expecting there to be more consistency after like preseason gets done with and the new head coach kind of experiments with who he wants where and what will work best for everyone. And I'd like to see more goals, more assists consistently. He had a ton, he did great, but towards the end of the season, Mo was outshining him by like comparing a lighthouse to an iPhone flashlight at points, if you will. He had a phenomenal season. Do not get me wrong. I stand by it. But I would be a bit more worried about him having a sophomore slump, because towards the end of last season, he seemed to be a bit more tired and just kind of ready to not relax, but move on to having more success in the future. And I also don't think teams had enough time to develop we really need to worry about that Raymond kid thing, like you were saying with Seider. So he doesn't have that going against him next year. So hopefully he'll be able to jump out of the gates a bit harder than anyone was expecting and just knock them off their feet, or he'll come in at the level he was towards the end of last season in a bit of a sophomore slump. So just keep learning from his teammates, get a nice, strong mindset that losing all the time and blowout losses doesn't make what you're doing any less important. I think that's hard for any rookie. So seeing that happen in your first NHL season, you're like, oh dear God, what did I get into? So I'm hopeful. He has everything he needs to have a great season. So knock on wood, he'll not slump.
Two things. One, like comparing a lighthouse to an iPhone flashlight, top-notch stuff there. Holy cow. And then two, and I'm going to kind of slide in my 2 cents right here. One, you made a really good point about him being tired after 82 games. That's actually why he didn't go to the World Championships after the season, because he said basically he just needed to take some time off and refresh, basically, because it was exhausting, and that was his first time doing that. So there's definitely some merit to him kind of losing some steam down the stretch there. And then there's also, you mentioned him flatlining towards the end of the season, and I think that kind of goes hand in hand with what my thought is and what I would like to see out of him in year two. Who was missing down the stretch for the Red Wings. Dylan Larkin. Larkin went out and he was no longer in the lineup. And Raymond lost his top center, the person that he was basically attached to the hip to all year. And of course, he flatlined. So my expectation, or my hope for him at least, is that he can produce without Larkin. Because if it's, let's be honest, Larkin benefited from having Raymond on his wing, probably the best winger he's ever had to play with. But Raymond also benefited greatly from having a center like Larkin to play with, probably the best center he's ever played with. And it's great that they have chemistry together, and you can always go back to that top line if you need to. But I think that for Raymond to develop more as a player and to be that cornerstone piece on the offense that they're going to build around, he needs to be able to produce without having Larkin attached to his hip. The best teams have more than one top line. And in order for the Red Wings to have more than one top line, they're going to need players like Raymond to be able to carry their own line. And I would like to see Raymond, maybe not right away, but by the end of the year, I would be interested to see him drop down to the second line with the goal of him basically carrying that line and being the catalyst for everything that kind of goes on with that line. Can you imagine Raymond playing on the opposite wing of Vrana? Like, that opens up a lot. If you have Larkin and Bertuzzi kind of linked together, you can throw in whoever. You could throw Zadina up there if you really wanted to, or Kubalik or whoever. But I think for Raymond to continue to grow, he needs to be able to produce without having Larkin on his line. Like I said, it doesn't need to happen right away, but I would like to see it at some point. He just needs to prove that he can do it by himself, basically. Now, sorry for adding my 2 cents in there, but Matt, we're going to go over to you now. What are you looking for out of the young Swede in his second year?
Well, you guys both make good points about Raymond. The thing is, one thing about the Red Wings this year is they've got a lot more talent on the team.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can just go, okay, we got to shut down Raymond. You got David Perron there now. Kubalik's a pretty good player, even though he wasn't that good in Chicago this past year. He's a former 30-goal scorer, though. He's got that talent. He's got more talent around him, so he's not going to be the guy that everyone's going to be like, okay, we got to shut down Raymond or we're not going to win, right? So I think he's going to have a better chance of not having the sophomore slump because he's not going to be focused as much on. Yeah. But to everyone else's point, he did slow down. I was doing the Calder tracker all season last year, and there was a point there I'm like, oh, Seider's really going ahead of him now, and some other rookies were kind of creeping up on him too. So I think he kind of stopped consistently getting points as much as he was during the early part of the season. So he did slow down towards the end of the season. And the one thing about these guys coming over from Europe, they don't play as much. They don't play those 82 game seasons over there. They do play more than like college, but they're still not playing that same NHL schedule. So I wasn't surprised to kind of slow down at the end. And then he did go through COVID as well. So there was a lot of factors into it, but he had a heck of a season. To be in the Calder race almost pretty much half the season, he was 1-2 with Seider there. Maybe towards the end he kind of slowed down, but he's got so much talent. I have no doubt he's going to have another good season. He may slow down. I think forwards in general have more of a chance of going through a sophomore slump because of how much they score, and teams go on them like, hey, we can't let them roll over the competition like they did in the rookie season. So, but Raymond just has so much talent and so much skill, and he surprised at the beginning of the season. No one expected him to be in a Calder Trophy race at all. No one expected him to make the lineup. So he was a surprise in general at the beginning. Obviously, he's not going to be a surprise coming in now because teams like, hey, there he's good. So, but he's again really young. So even if he does have a sophomore slump, shouldn't be panicking. He's still a really good player. So, but my expectation is he's still going to have a decent season. But again, he's like Delaney said, he has more of a chance of having a sophomore slump than Seider.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, Nate, you get the last word on this one before we go off the rush again. What are you looking for out of Lucas Raymond in his second year?
Just want to say, I do think that in last year's show, I did say Raymond and Seider would make the roster. That's the only time in my life I've ever been 100% right. Run with that one. You guys, yeah, no, not a chance. We all know that. Somewhere Pat just smacked his head and he doesn't know why. To go, basically, you guys hit every major point, though. So I'm going to go historically. If you go back to when the Penguins had Malkin and Crosby in basically their infancy, Fleury's kind of an outlier. It very rarely happens that you have that many number one picks in a row and they all work out, and they did. Malkin and Crosby both hit that wall. Then they started to rise as you built around them. And we all will not talk about, what happened in 2009. And then to a lesser extent, you have Kane and Taves. Now, Kane was always the better player. Taves was steadier. He was that leader. But Kane really was, the straw that stirred the drink. Well, now, okay, if we're going to draw that comparison, we'll go one more and we'll say the Lightning. You can either say Kucherov and Hedman, or you can say Kucherov then came in and complemented what Stamkos and Hedman had already begun. So if history is truly a good indicator and health plays the way it should, for everyone in Red Wings fandom, Seider and Raymond should only increase. In this case, Raymond was shut down for all the reasons you said, specifically to the point that he was really the only offense for when Fabry and Larkin and so many guys went down. Now you've built around him. Now he's going to have a little more diversity in that lineup of where, to your point, Devin, you could slide him down a line. You don't have to sit him up on that top line anymore. And now they'll even tinker a little bit with that power play. I think if anything that you really want to see as a Red Wings fan, you want to see if Raymond can now take the power play to the next level, because you put him on the bumper and consistently with a lot of those big time scorers that they just signed, the clutch guys, the Cops and the Perrons, and it'll be a lot of fun to watch. So the increase will happen. It's just a matter of just how much incrementally.
I like that point about the power play, because last year, I think for the most part, the power play ran exclusively through Moritz Seider. And that's one of the reasons why he won the Calder. And while you still, that's going to happen regardless. We just talked about how he's not going to have a sophomore slump, but you do want to see Raymond take a more hands-on approach and be the other guy that it runs through. Whether he's scoring the goals or setting them up. He's going to be in a position where he's got plenty of talent around him, and he's got all the tools to be sniper playmaker extraordinaire. So I completely agree. You'd love to see him be kind of the big reason why that power play takes a big step up on top of the talent that they've added in the offseason. All right, now one more time, let's go off the rush, shall we? Starting with Delaney, we're going to start with you on this one. Seider had 50 points in his rookie season. We all know that was very impressive. So now I have to ask, will his 2022 23-point total be higher or lower?
Higher, if not exactly the same, but I'm, like Nate said earlier, taking the over.
Very good. Nate, we know what your answer is, but go ahead and say it again.
Yeah, it's the over. He'll be over.
Matt, what do you think?
I think definitely over.
I think we could be in for a 60-point season this year, so definitely over. All right, next one. Now we got to talk about Raymond, right? How many goals and points? We're going specific here. How many goals and points will Raymond have in his second season? Matt, we're starting with you.
Holy. I'm gonna go off rails a bit and go say 30 goals. I'm gonna say he's gonna 30. And my gosh, for points, I'm gonna say like 65. 65 to 70.
That's a good season. Nate, over to you now. Goals and points, Lucas Raymond.
We're on the same wavelength there, Matt. I was gonna say 28 goals and about 63, 64 points. So we'll say 63 to be safe.
Delaney, over to you.
I had 30 goals written down and then 45 assists. So I'd say at solid 65, 70 point season is what I'm guessing.
I'm going to say he falls just short of 30. I'm going to give him 29, and I will say 71 points. We'll tie him with my prediction from Larkin from last week. All right. Good stuff. Thanks for playing along. Be sure to let us know down there how many points you think Seider and Raymond are going to score this year. And that's our show. Thank you so much to Matt, Nate, and Delaney for joining me for today's show. And thank you for tuning in. Be sure to sign up for that morning skate if you haven't, figured it out yet. Details are down in the description. And while you are down there, be sure to give this video a like, follow the channel if you haven't already, and drop a comment down below and let us know how many points Seider and Raymond are going to score. And also let us know how excited you are to see these kids enter their second season, because we know there could be that this team's going to grow based on how much their young players grow. And if Seider and Raymond take that big step, the Red Wings are going to take a big step. Thanks again for hanging out with us today, and we hope to see you again. Bye-bye for now.